very pleasant good evening. It's time for Startup Talk, brought to you by Indian River State College and your host, Mr. Tom Kindred.
Thank you, sir, and welcome to another segment and installment of Startup Talk, the show designed to assist and help Treasure and Research Coast residents who want to start, grow, or accelerate their business. As I always say, what a great place it is to own and operate a business along the beautiful Research and Treasure Coast. We will spend time during our hour together this evening to highlight and create awareness regarding the very powerful and robust business assistance and support programs that exist right here in our community at our very own Indian River State College. I am Tom Kindred. I serve as the Regional Director for the Small Business Development Center here at IRSC. Underwriters for this segment of Startup Talk are the law firm of Dean, Mead, Minton, and Zwimmer, celebrating 30 years of service on the Treasure Coast, on the web at deanmead.com. And our friends at Harbor Community Bank, banking the way it used to be. Looking for a better banking experience? Discover the Harbor Community Banking difference. Stop by our local branch and speak to a customer service representative or loan officer today. Harbor Community Bank, equal housing lender, member FDIC, and as always, our good friends at Express Printing of Port St. Lucie. So, Greg, how are you this evening?
Doing well. Getting ready
All right.
to pack our bags for IRSC basketball.
Have we tipped off the first game yet? Are we underway?
Actually, it's going to be a multi-team scrimmage in the Orlando area.
Wow.
Over the weekend, I think we're playing 3 colleges.
This weekend.
And 2 of them are Division II schools. So
Wow.
Charlie's going to test his club. Yeah,
Well, that's good. Early on test, too.
You bet. And
All
the
right.
ladies are up in Georgia. So, yeah.
Okay. So we can hear the game via WPSL this weekend?
Not
No?
this weekend. No,
Okay.
these are scrimmages. So
Okay.
they're kind of controlled by the coaches. So
Okay.
our first broadcast will be against an AIA school, Ave Maria University, and that will be on the 2nd of November. It's a
Okay.
Thursday night.
Great.
Of course, we have to negotiate where our Startup Talk show is going to be done. Will it be done in the gymnasium at 4:30 in the
Well,
afternoon?
hey,
I mean, who
I can-
knows?
Listen, I could do Startup Talk for a basketball game. Sounds good to me.
There you go. Oh, man.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear we are about ready to get started with basketball again.
Yes, sir.
It's a fun time on campus.
It's going to be
and
our
again,
10th season.
10th season.
10th season of
to
doing
cover the
IRSC.
games.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they got a special place for you up there, I hope.
Yeah, I think it's down at the bottom of the pool, right behind it.
Hey, listen, Greg, we got a very impressive guest tonight. I want to thank our marketing person, Patrice Koblis, for setting this interview up tonight. We have with us tonight Dr. Kennedy, who is the Assistant Vice President and Director of Counseling and Psychological Services at the University of West Florida. Did I get that right, Dr. Kennedy?
Yes, you did.
All right.
My pleasure to be here.
Listen, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us.
Can you counsel an entire radio station? We're a wreck right now.
Listen, wait till I read her bio. She is more than qualified to counsel this group here at WPSL.
There you go.
Dr. Kennedy provides leadership and oversight to student health services, wellness services, recreation and sports services, and counseling and psychological services, as well as holding the status of Chief Mental Health Officer. She has been at the University of West Florida since 1999 in a variety of roles, including staff psychologist, director, student health and wellness education, and director of health and counseling. She completed her Ph.D. in counseling psychology, magna cum laude, at the State University of New York at Buffalo, and her Bachelor of Science in Psychology, magna cum laude, at George Mason University. She's a licensed psychologist and worked in a variety of settings with children, adults, and families before beginning her work at UWF, that's University of West Florida. At UWF, she's provided mental health assessments, psychotherapy, supervised and trained mental health interns, postdoctorate residents. She has provided consultation to staff, faculty, students, served on numerous committees, written and managed grants, served on the care team, and managed the service health fee. She has presented continuing education workshops on such issues as work-life balance, which is a big issue now that we teach actually in business courses. So she's taught on those issues and trauma and over 300 workshops to students, including stress and time management, relationship management, and a myriad of mental health promotional workshops. Additionally, she has taught both graduate and undergraduate classes at UWF. She is passionate about prevention and intentionally endeavors to help create a culture at UWF in which students, staff, and faculty strive for physical and mental health.
She did all that before she was 22.
Yes, she did. Isn't that right, Dr. Kennedy?
Oh, but of course.
Listen, we certainly appreciate you taking time out this evening, Dr. Kennedy, to be with us here on Startup Talk. I can't wait to get to our conversation. We're gonna tie all this mental health and stress and work-life balance, going to tie it all into as all of our business professionals and business owners and operators come off a stressful time here, the storms that recently came through,
And it still is.
And
Yeah.
you know, you're even dealing with some issues from rain and the flooding issues. So we're going to tie it all in. So again, Dr. Kennedy, welcome to the show. We appreciate you taking time out this evening.
My pleasure.
Before we get to Dr. Kennedy, though, I want to start this evening with a quick recap of the programs available to the local business community in regards to disaster relief and assistance. Again, I want to talk about a new program that just got activated. Governor Scott activated a $25 million Florida citrus emergency loan program to support citrus growers impacted by Hurricane Irma. The Bridge Loan Program, managed by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, will provide interest-free loans to citrus growers that experienced physical or economic damage during the storm. The application period, I believe, is now open and will be open through November the 30th. According to Governor Scott, Hurricane Irma was a massive storm that impacted communities across our state, causing hundreds of millions of dollars of losses for Florida's citrus industry. He is committed to working with the state and federal partners to help Florida's citrus industry and the nearly 76,000 jobs it supports. The Florida Citrus Emergency Loan Program will be a valuable resource for affected business owners. Florida Commissioner of Agriculture Adam Putnam said, "The path Hurricane Irma took through Florida could not have been more lethal to Florida agriculture, especially the citrus industry. We're all committed to getting growers the help they need as quickly as possible to be able to rebuild." He thanked Governor Scott for his leadership and for making financial assistance available. The DEO will administer the Florida Citrus Emergency Loan Program in partnership with the Florida SBDC Network. So just as we are on the bridge loan, we are the primary point of contact for this. The network will provide cash flow to businesses damaged by the disaster. The interest-free loans will help bridge the gap between the time damage is incurred and when a business secures other financial resources, including payment of crop insurance claims or federal disaster recovery appropriations. Up to $25 million has been allotted for the program. So that is the $25 million Citrus Emergency Loan Program to aid citrus growers.
Wow. And again, they can talk to you folks on the Pruitt campus.
Yes.
St. Lucie
Well, that's
West?
what I was going to remind everybody too now. Now at the Pruitt campus, 500 California Avenue down in St. Lucie West. The Pruitt campus has been designated a BRC, which is a Business Recovery Center. We are located in the F building, as in Frank. It is the Enterprise Hub, and there is an SBA representative now at the Pruitt campus in that F building, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6.
Okay.
So we are a business recovery center, official business recovery center. So businesses can walk in, meet with Vanessa, who is with the SBA, and talk about their ability to gain access to SBA loans, which can be accessed for either economic or physical damage to their business. So again, that's the Pruitt campus is a BRC, Business Recovery Center, 9 to 6 every day, Monday through Saturday. And we expect that that'll continue through certainly midway through the month of November.
Oh, my goodness.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Yep, going to be there, going to be available.
Well,
All
what's
right?
weird is, if it wasn't the hurricane, it was that unnamed wave that came in after the hurricane
Right.
that, gave us a double jolt around here.
Exactly. So it was a kind of a double whammy. And again, the Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan is still available. That is open and operating until the end of October, October the 30th. So that is the loan. Again, primary point of contact is the SBDC at IRSC for that. We have taken at least, as of yesterday, 25 applications for that loan. So a lot of businesses hearing about it, taking advantage of it, and I encourage you to do so. It is, again, just like I mentioned for the citrus bridge loan. This is a bridge loan for any business to bridge themselves from the time that the hurricane came through, damaged the business, until the time they can get their insurance, secure an SBA loan. So very helpful process. I know, Greg, you've talked in the past. A number of hurricanes ago.
2004, you bet.
Yeah. You took advantage of the bridge loan program.
We did. So
I encourage businesses to contact us, get information about that bridge loan program. It is still in effect and will be in effect until October the 30th. Got a little information today. Very interesting program from our good friend Jill Marassa down at the St. Lucie EDC, Economic Development Council. The Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, again, the DEO doing a lot of things right now. The Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, the Florida National Guard, and the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs will again be holding the annual statewide hiring event for veterans and their spouses, Paychecks for Patriots. This year, Paychecks for Patriots will be held on November the 16th at the Port St. Lucie Community Center from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Paychecks for Patriots event is a special hiring event dedicated to local veterans. More than 1,700 military veteran candidates and their spouses who participated in the events across the state of Florida have gained employment as a result of the relationship formed during Paychecks for Patriots. You need to contact Victor Melendez, who is the local Veterans Employment Representative. He is with Career Source Research Coast. You can get Victor at 866-482-4473, extension 510. And get with him at Career Source Research Coast, Victor Melendez, for more information on the Paychecks for Patriots event coming up on November the 16th.
Great.
All right.
Good stuff.
And then final announcement I want to make tonight. I want to again remind everyone of the 2017 Florida SBDC at IRSC Women in Business Summit. That'll take place next Thursday, October the 19th, be held at the IRSC Pruitt campus. You can get more information on that event at the irscbiz.com site, or you can call us at the 462-7631 for more information and registration information for the Women in Business Summit. I think this is at least probably going on the 15th year of the Women's in Business Summit for the SBDC. And as I tell folks all the time, please go check out that irscbiz.com site. I promise you, if you click on that events calendar, you will be impressed, shocked, and surprised at all we've got going on. All kinds of no-cost seminars brought to you by SCORE and by SBDC. And as I always tell folks, the most important detail to remember about all of those SCORE and SBDC workshops and seminars is there's never any cost to attend those events, nor is there any cost to engage the SBDC or one of its consultants. I tell folks all the time, and I love telling the story, back when I was in business, had I taken the time to become engaged in and participate in the SBDC and their programs, I am confident I could have been a better manager, owner, and operator of my business. The college and its president, Dr. Massey, and the Board of Trustees have done an incredible job of building a very powerful one-stop shop for business assistance and support through the Dan K. Richardson Entrepreneurship Development Institute. The EDI, as we call it, is made up of that Small Business Development Center, the Business Incubation Program, and the Corporate and Community Training Institute. You can always get the latest on all the EDI and the upcoming activities at the irscbiz.com site. That's irscbiz.com. And again, check out that events calendar. And as always, a big thank you to the SBDC and their consultants for the work they perform in assisting our local business community.
And there is a CCTI course for everyone in our audience.
Yes,
Yeah,
there is.
They
Doesn't
are
matter what
so
you're doing.
diverse.
Yeah, and it's
amazing.
and things are, again, we're kind of in our, if there is a busy season, we're kind of in our busy season now with the Corporate and Community Training Institute. We kind of track along with the college, so it's the fall semester, so things are getting busy, and thanks to you, Greg, and Carol here at WPSL and WSTU, and thanks to our friends at WQCS, we get a lot of response from this radio show. So it's been very nice to see. I think the listenership may have expanded beyond my parents. So with that, I want to turn our attention back to Dr. Kennedy. But before we do that, I want to quickly take just a minute and recognize the underwriters for Startup Talk here from Indian River State College.
Startup Talk is being underwritten by the law firm of Dean Meade, Minton, and Zwimmer, celebrating 30 years of service on the Treasure Coast. Practice areas include commercial litigation, tax and business law, real estate development, agricultural and water law, trusts, probate, and estate planning. On the web at deanmeade.com. And by Harbor Community Bank, banking the way it used to be. Looking for a better banking experience? At Harbor Community Bank, our customers' needs are our top priority. Whether you're looking to finance a dream home or open a small business line of credit or send your first child off to college, Harbor Community Bank is ready to assist you every step of the way. Why wait? Discover the community banking difference. Stop by your local branch and speak to a customer service rep or a loan officer today. Harbor Community Bank, an equal housing lender, member FDIC.
And we are back. This is Startup Talk from the Dan K. Richardson Entrepreneurship Development Institute at Indian River State College. I am Tom Kindred, Regional Director for the Florida Small Business Development Center, and we appreciate you joining us again this Thursday evening on Startup Talk, and we have a very powerful guest with us tonight, Dr. Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy, you still with us?
Yes.
All right. Dr. Kennedy serves as the Assistant Vice President and the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services at the University of West Florida. So you are coming to us from beautiful Pensacola.
Yes, I am, and it is beautiful today.
Is it? How did you guys weather Nate? That's right.
Yeah.
It was Nate that came through your neck of the woods.
Pensacola really lucked out. Irma sort of just barely kind of missed us, and then Nate just barely missed us. So we were lucky this time. We very well remember Ivan and Dennis. So
That's right.
we were delighted to miss out on both of these storms.
That's right. I'm sure you were. Well, we here in St. Lucie County, we missed the worst part of Irma, but yep. So we kind of feel for those SBDCs across the state that certainly took it a little worse than we did. So, again, we appreciate you taking time out of your evening this evening, Dr. Kennedy, to join us. I guess I went through your bio, which is off the charts impressive with all that you've done and all that you're doing. But why don't you give us a little bit of your personal take on your background and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm a psychologist. I primarily have worked at the University of West Florida. I've been here now 18 years. So
Wow.
This has been my home. This has been my professional career. But I've done a variety of things here, working in a bunch of different kinds of capacities. And like I said before, having survived Ivan and Dennis, most folks won't remember that the University of West Florida closed for 3 weeks during Ivan. And at the time, I was the counseling center director, and so we had a lot of things that we had to do to care for this community, not just in that first year, but really for a couple of years where we were really seeing the impacts of hurricanes. And we deal all the time, and whenever you live on the coast like this, you live in paradise,
right.
but paradise comes with that risk of those kinds of things. So it's one of the things that I think I've got some expertise in, just dealing with the anxiety before the storm and then kind of what some of the responses are after the storm.
Right. Yeah, and I did not realize that Ivan had done that much damage up there. So, closed for 3 weeks. I mean, that puts a real hardship on a university or college to be closed and trying to make that work up and getting students back in the routines. That's got to be tough on an educational system like UWF.
Yeah, we actually, University of West Florida learned a lot, and we have shared those lessons learned over and over and over again, at our professional conferences, kind of helping folks, like, how do you prepare for this? How do you survive it?
Right.
What do you need to do? Because we really became kind of experts in, how do you continue with a semester when you've closed down for 3 weeks?
Right.
And we did. We did manage that. And when Katrina came around, we were really able to reach out to our folks to the west, and had quite a few students that came over to University of West Florida and integrated in here with us for a little while their families were recovering over in Mississippi and in Louisiana. So, just lots of experience, coping with these natural disasters, in particular hurricanes.
And it, of course, how our memory fades, but 2004, of course, St. Lucie County, well, the Treasure Coast, really, in 2004 was hit by 2 hurricanes, Francis and Jean.
Right through Jensen Beach, both
right.
of
So,
them. Yeah.
so IRSC shares, I'm sure, in your experience as I wasn't with the college at the time, but I know they took a beating, those 2 hurricanes, and were closed for multiple weeks. At the time too. So yeah, share a little bit of history there. So you've been dealing a lot with business owners impacted by the hurricane in a physical and economic manner. Tell us how someone might be impacted emotionally or psychologically, through one of these storms.
Yeah, we see a whole range of emotional responses, that sometimes people kind of wander around their property or their business and they just look like they're kind of fine. They're just sort of like, oh, well, here we go. They're joking, sarcastic. And sometimes that's actually shock, that they are really not kind of taking it all in. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're just highly resilient individuals. But a lot of times what we see is this range of grief and sort of depression and things sort of on that sort of side, to anger and anxiety and kind of what we might think of on the other side. Because just, again, people have different reactions. If your house is completely flooded, whatever your coping mechanisms are come in. And so we'll hear people that are, again, extremely tearful. Why me? How could this happen? They start to question their faith. They just kind of get into this very kind of dark place. But then we'll see other folks that just get mad, like, this is ridiculous and this shouldn't be this way, and and they're looking for somebody to blame in some way, shape, or form, that there should have been a wall somewhere or somebody should have done something or kind of whatever it is. But then again, you get that other kind of major emotional reaction, which is just anxiety or panic. Right. There will be people that just become really numb, and they are just in the middle of just major anxiety or panic attack where they have no idea where to go, what to do, and they're just sort of looking, off into the distance because they are just,
Right.
have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, so do you see some, like, I think you talked about the anger and then some of the typical responses. What would you break those down into, say, categories like a behavioral and emotional response?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, like, behaviorally, we see all kinds of things that happen for folks, like sleep disturbances, changes in their appetite, changes in their activity level, in terms of, people that used to get up and go in the morning, but that now cannot seem to get themselves out of bed, or people that, would have sort of a slow start, and they can't sleep. They're not, they're staying up all night. They just can't relax in any way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, we see a lot of different kinds of ways in which people are impacted, where, they're not themselves in some way, shape, or form. They can be really confused, or they can be, again, a lot of our business owners are people who are entrepreneurs, they are
Right.
out there making decisions. They're leaders, and they'll be stuck. They're like, should I apply for the loan? Should I not? They can't concentrate. They'll have things like dreams or nightmares, or some people didn't, they don't evacuate, and they have, flashbacks of the crisis event. We had a lot of that with Hurricane Ivan here. There were tremendous amounts of tornadoes. And so if you talk to anybody who stayed in Pensacola during Hurricane Ivan, what they will say to you, I've never heard anybody say anything other than, I will never do that again. And that's because
Right.
the tornadoes were everywhere. And so that's another thing that you'll see for folks, just sort of behaviorally. that's going on for them is that they might have what we think of as some of the symptoms for post-traumatic stress disorder, where they're really reliving, some of the events or having flashbacks to it.
Right.
I can identify with that because my wife and I were in this building when, it was going on, and you knew that there were tornadoes close. And, and of course, the tornado warnings are going off like crazy on the radio station. And, you just think, wow. And you are right as far as like lack of sleep. You're just kind of wondering as a business owner, when is the other shoe going to fall? I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yep.
Is it usual for people to maybe ignore or not recognize the impact of this added stress, after an event like this?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the person. I mean, some people are just, they can't stop crying, and they'll say that I can't stop crying. I can't even get my paperwork filled out because I can't face the FEMA stuff, or I can't face the, whatever it is that they're trying to get done. But then there's other folks that they seem fine. Everybody's like, oh, we think they're fine. But then you start to realize they're losing weight. They're irritable. They're not themselves. They look 10 years older. Again, you can see it sort of on folks when they're not even always recognizing it. And again, one of the things we see with our leaders and with our entrepreneurs is that they're go-getters, they take care of their own and they take care of themselves. And so a lot of times, rather than being the folks that just don't get out of bed, they're the ones that don't go to bed. They're up planning, they're trying to, figure stuff out, they're trying to make payroll, they're trying to do whatever it is that they can to support all their employees and to, again, not have too much of an interruption in their business, and they don't recognize the long-term impacts of, that kind of level of lack of sleep or lack of attention just to your own sort of self-care.
Right.
So, yeah, sometimes they really don't realize what's going on until it kind of crashes and burns, and then they're like, oh, okay, wait a minute, maybe I should take care of myself.
Good point. Tell us a little bit about what you refer to as the psychological first aid.
Oh, yeah. Actually, psychological first aid was developed by the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder in conjunction with another great agency, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And it's been, nearly 20 years now that this has been in place, and it's really a great model. There's a training that anyone can take. It's a 6-hour online interactive class that the National Child Traumatic Stress Network offers. But it's an evidence-informed modular approach. And what it does is it teaches people how to assist others in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. And it's really great because it's adaptable to really most different kinds of situations where there's any kind of a traumatic event that occurs.
Okay.
Do you want me to just kind of run through it quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is fascinating.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So with psychological first aid, I mean, really the biggest piece is that first and foremost, every single person is significant. And so whoever it is, rich or poor, whatever ways in which you're interacting with this individual, you're just recognizing that here's a person who needs help. And so when you're providing psychological first aid in any kind of a climate where something has happened, you're kind of recognizing everybody, and everybody is important. There's no priority order in terms of that. And you're looking to be aware of, okay, how's this person seem to be right now? Do they seem to be confused? Do they seem to be disoriented? Are they overwhelmed? Kind of what's going on for them? And just kind of cataloging that for yourself, and also taking note of, are there any cross-cultural things I need to be aware of? Is there anything that would be appropriate or inappropriate about me with my gender interacting with this person and their gender, or whatever, based on any kind of cultural kinds of factors that might be in place. But what you do with psychological first aid, or really what you do when you're approaching anybody in the immediate aftermath of a storm or any kind of event like this, is that you always have just a calm, compassionate, and caring way of being, which makes sense. That's kind of like what we would want. But a lot of times what happens is people get really elevated and really escalated, and they don't approach it in that way. But what we find is that the folks that you're interacting with and that you're trying to help, they're probably having whatever emotional reaction they're having. And so it's really important to just kind of slow it down, speak softly, make eye contact, be really personable. When you're trying to give psychological first aid to somebody, you find out their name. You introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Rebecca. What's your name? You call them by their name. You speak in some kind of way in which you're letting them know, looking them in the eye, like, you are important. You matter to me. I'm here. Let's figure this out. And then basically the core actions in psychological first aid are really just to figure out what are the immediate needs of a person, right? So sometimes, again, if you're working in a shelter or if you're, again, wandering through a neighborhood that's just had a reaction, or if you're working at a small business development center and there's somebody coming in, following a natural disaster, you want to identify what's the most immediate needs of that person. And then just clarify that, really kind of discern it down. Because, again, often people who are going through something, they can't figure out where to start. They're so overwhelmed that it is just difficult to just figure that out. So having you sort of approaching them in this caring and compassionate way where you're giving all your attention to them and you're just kind of figuring out, okay, what is a practical and realistic action plan that we need? What has to come first? What comes after that? Thinking about what's short-term versus what's long-term and just taking action on those things and then making sure that you kind of touch in on that psychological piece of, okay, your social support network, who matters to you, who's around, who can you, be in touch with, and just take ownership, really, to kind of be there for them.
That's amazing. You start thinking about with Ivan, was the college a shelter at one point?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to figure out what to do with all of our international students. That was quite an event, because we knew we were going to be closed for 3 weeks, and Housing Residence Life was closed, and there was power. We barely had any cell phone coverage. There was almost no power in the city for a week, and we were trying to, at that point, figure out where we had to close our shelter eventually, even though we weren't going to be able to keep it open the full 3 weeks. We had to figure out where those international students were going to go.
Wow.
Yeah, and you're so right about how people come in. Of course, we're certainly not as busy in our center as centers that were more impacted by Irma, but we're still getting people that come into our center that lost power in their business for multiple weeks. And when you lose power, you can't do business. So
No.
And to lose 2-3 weeks worth of revenue, I mean, that could be devastating to a business. So we're getting those kinds of stories from people coming in. Had one just the other day, and it's especially really, with restaurants, because you lose power, you lose your coolers, you lose all your inventory.
Sure.
Now you gotta now you have to not only deal with reopening, but you've got to restock in order to start to generate the revenue again. And this wasn't the busy time. It wasn't our so-called season. So the restaurants were already a little bit in their slow time. So it was really, for a lot of restaurant and restaurateurs, it was kind of a double whammy.
What we've run into with a lot of our clients is that a lot of them had bundled their phone with cable,
right,
or satellite, and they were down. So so people couldn't even get in touch with that business.
Right.
So they, and the average customer didn't even know if that business was even open.
Right.
Right.
That was a downside to some of our clients.
Yeah. So it really is. It doesn't. It just doesn't. When you drive around our community and you don't see roofs off and you don't see signs
the
down,
blue tarps.
Blue tarps.
Yeah.
You think, well, everything's. We're in pretty good shape. But you power outages and like Greg says, not having access to the internet, not having access to phones. I mean, that's a big impact on businesses. And
absolutely.
And can bring on a lot of stress as people, like you say, are trying to, and one of the things we talked about was keeping employees. How do you keep an employee?
There you go.
When you can't pay them, there's no revenue coming in. They've got to go do something else. So all of a sudden you could, if you're down long enough, you could find yourself having to reopen and not have any employees. So a lot of things, hit a business owner when you get events like hurricanes. Is that's a fair statement, Dr. Kennedy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes, one of the most helpful things that anyone that's interacting with these business owners can do is just listen to them. They each have their stories, just like we've been sort of sharing some of our stories today about the different storms that we've survived. They have their story, and people really don't recognize what a fundamental component of helping others just listening to them is. Just really, truly, again, giving them your undivided attention and just caring through listening. That for many people, just having the opportunity to just kind of tell their story and have somebody say, oh, man, that's terrible. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. It just is kind of reassuring, like in humanity and just sort of in life. It's like, okay, people care. And you just feel like, okay, I got that out,
Right.
and we underestimate that, but it's really important. It's a big piece of how we can help others.
Good point. So, listening, showing that empathy, showing that you care. Is that would you call that like some of the maybe a coping skill, or what are some of the coping skills that could be implemented as you work through these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a way to give social support, and probably the biggest tip for coping, with anything going on in life is to get social support. And it's part of why, people that are in relationships with others just do better, right? So everybody laughs about that statistic of marriage, and you live longer if you're married, because, of course, folks like to make these jokes about, ball and chains or kind of whatever. But actually, really having a good social support network, whether that is a partner, or family or children or really just good friends that are your family. Social support is one of the most important things. And, when people listen to you, that's a way of sort of showing social support, that you matter. I care about you. And so that's one of the biggest things that we can do, for folks is to just make sure that they're not so busy doing, that they forget to kind of invest in those relationships, because those relationships, whether it's that quick conversation or the quick hug or, somebody taking them out to dinner or, whatever it is. I mean, they make such a huge, huge difference for folks. That's really my top thing for coping with a natural disaster is, to get social support. But there's lots of other things you can do, and I'll run through a few of those if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Does that sound
absolutely.
good?
Yep.
So, one thing we always talk about is you got to have some healthy outlets to cope with your feelings, because you're going to have feelings. There's going to be all kinds of different ways as you kind of go through the process. And again, what we found, following our storm here in Pensacola was that it wasn't the first 3 months. Like in the first 3 months, there were lots of people to kind of help. Do you know what I mean? There was a real awareness
Right.
of what's going on. But it was 12 months, they're still in a FEMA trailer. 18 months, they're ready to kill people in their FEMA trailer.
Right.
I mean, it was just really, or think about a business, you have this bump, where, okay, yes, maybe I did lose my employees, and I'm trying to get everybody back on, but you reach this point where you're like, is it ever going to be the way it used to be?
Right.
And that's when people really kind of struggle. And so what you have to have is not just the short-term view of what are you doing in that first 3 months, but what's that long-term view, right? And the ways we help ourselves by having sort of, healthy outlets are we do need kind of to exercise, to eat right, and to get enough sleep. Those are the big three, Sometimes people are not really good at that. But I'm telling you, if you've never had a walking program and there's something like this that happens to you, start a walking program, because walking is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Even if it's just around the neighborhood, take the dog, hold your wife's hand, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be like power walking, but some sort of exercise or something that you enjoy. But also, taking breaks. We underestimate how important funny movies are, or, something that you really enjoy, getting out on the water or going for a hike or, again, playing with little kids. I mean, kids and puppies and kittens, man, they just lift our spirits, and they are healthy outlets, and so those are important things to do. But I think another thing that folks don't always think about is, again, they go into overdrive, and they're just, madly trying to get everything done, and they just don't take those breaks that they really need to do. And so we always say to folks, maintain your schedule as best you can, set your priorities, break things down into small steps, structure your time in such a way that you actually have a break for lunch, a break for dinner, and some kind of downtime, because you actually do a lot better if you give yourself that. We kind of, there's a metaphor we'll use sometimes in psychology. Most folks have gotten on a plane these days, and there's always this, whole safety thing they give at the beginning, and they say make sure to put on your own oxygen mask before you help others. And
Right.
that's really a good tip, because if you don't have your oxygen mask on, you can't help very many people. But once yours is on, you can help a lot of people. And so if you are a business owner and you want to make sure your employees, have a job and that your business is growing and thriving, then you need to make sure that you take some breaks. You got to have your oxygen mask on. You've got to schedule in some downtime, because again, there's a long-term gain here, and there's a long-term gain if you want to think about it in terms of that. So
that's a good point too. You do make a good point that the business owner is really the driver behind the business, and it they've really got to take care of themselves. They've got to take care of their business, because that's really the survival of the employees. And the employees depend on that owner, and we talk a lot about that in business courses. That there is some pressure on the business owner because he does provide those jobs. So you're right. The business owner's really got to take care of himself first.
Absolutely, yeah. He or she really does need to do that, because what you find is otherwise they end up coping with type 2 diabetes, or they end up coping with heart disease, or they end up, there's all these physical manifestations where, your body finally says, would have been good if you would have ate right, exercised, and got some sleep, because we're now going to have all these kind of consequences of things that are health things that are, at least in part, preventable, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the last things that we always say to folks in terms of, coping with anything that is an extra added stressor. If you know there's an extra added stressor, whether that's a natural disaster or relationship troubles or kids that are making you crazy, whatever it is, get some extra rest. Not just your usual 7 to 9 hours, but if you know there's something stressful going on in your life, you need extra time and extra rest.
Right.
And sometimes I think, business leaders and folks that, are in those kinds of roles, they can see that they need to give that to their employees, but they just don't give it to themselves. They'll kind of try and sacrifice themselves so that they can give other people some time off to go meet with, the contractor, or, go sign some documents or whatever it is that they need to do. But then they just try and do it all. And again, you got to have that long-term view that, okay, I've got all this extra stress. I'm helping out all of my staff and employees, but I need to help myself first, or I'm not going to have any oxygen, and the whole thing's going to fold, and then everybody will be looking for a job.
That's amazing. Well, you mentioned long term, and Puerto Rico comes to mind. I mean, it's like, my gosh, what do they do? If you're a business owner there, and you just think, the roads. It's just so much of the infrastructure is gone.
Well, and again, the power too. When will I ever get power back?
Yeah, 10% of the island with power. I mean, and how many weeks after the storm? It's mind-boggling. You have to wonder how they're coping down there. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Now, again, you talked a little bit about helping the employees. Are there any other specific ways like a small business owner could help their employees?
Well, I think being flexible is probably one of the biggest things. Thinking about, whether there needs to be just different kinds of breaks or things that they might need to take care of their own business. Again, there's a lot of things that just, if you're trying to get even just a new roof, do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's just, there's so much where you have to go out, to the actual physical property and meet with different contractors, get quotes, review loans, sign documents, just do all kinds of stuff. So flexibility is probably, the biggest thing in terms of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's also important for them to just have a kind of positive attitude with them, like we will get through this, to just, we're in this together, just sort of in some way, shape, or form encourage them, that it will be okay, and that, again, that they're in it together. I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about short term and then long term. I mean, so what you're saying too is that long after the storm is past, I mean, you could see kind of some of these symptoms manifest themselves. It's like a lot of times we go into crisis mode right after the event, but maybe there's a little bit of a crash and burn 12 months from now. Is that kind of what you mean by the long term manifestation?
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, that's the thing, is we only have so much adrenaline in our bodies, and eventually you just can't do it anymore. And again, that's whether you're fighting a long-term illness or you're recovering from a hurricane, that, I mean, in the beginning, it's like, I'm going to beat this. I got this, no problem, and people are cocky, they'll be, just like, whatever, Nate, I got you,
Right.
But then after a while, it's like, okay, maybe Nate, you've got me.
Right.
I don't know, like people start to kind of lose that momentum.
Right.
And again, that's why we say, maintain your routine, I mean, because again, people try and cut corners. They're trying to fit everything in. So they're, running through fast food and, they're doing all this other kind of stuff. But every single thing that you do to cut those corners, ultimately in that long term, has an impact. And so you have to make really good decisions about, okay, where's my short-term gain and what's my long-term plan
Right.
In terms of those things.
Well, speaking of long-term plan, tips on how to prepare oneself for disasters emotionally. How do you, and especially here in the state of Florida, I mean, we were preparing for Irma for a week and a half or something. It was coming our way. So, I mean, you almost kind of got weary of the preparation,
Sure.
It was every minute of every day for certainly a week at least, knowing this thing was headed our way. So how do you kind of prepare yourself for all this?
Yeah, I think it's a mental stance that you take, that, I mean, when we think about ourselves as Americans or as Floridians, like, we think of ourselves as strong and powerful because we are. That we are resilient people. And, there's that old saying, fall 7 times, we'll stand up 8. That's the American way, and that's the Floridian way. And so that's what you see with business owners, too. I mean, you see people who, they have an entrepreneurial idea and they kind of go with it and it doesn't work out, and they come up with something else and they take it in another direction, because folks have a tremendous amount of grit and resilience. And I think when you recognize that in yourself, it really makes a huge difference. I mean, it's one of the big differences between working sort of with adults versus working with, like, college students. College students, they haven't failed a whole lot. They haven't survived a whole lot. Their parents have sort of prepared this lovely path for them where they didn't get hurt a whole lot. But grown-ups and business owners and, folks that are sort of out in the world, again, not that college students don't have stresses, they have major stresses, but the folks that have already lived a little bit of life, they've been through a few things. They've lost someone they care about. They've survived some sort of failure. They've survived some sort of rejection. They've regrouped. They've realized that, with every sort of hurdle that they have to jump over, that they know who they are. They know what their strength is. They're grounded in some way. Some people in their faith, some people in their own just sort of abilities. And I think, we're most resilient when we just sort of, again, can accurately assess how unbelievably strong human beings are. I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize. Like, people will ask me as a psychologist, like, how do you do it? How do you not burn out? Like, how do you sit with all this sadness and grief? And I'm like, honestly, I see people all the time who are resilient and beautiful and just amazing. I mean, they blow my mind. People come into therapy and they tell this horrible story, and then somehow they manage to get out of bed every day and they manage to figure out how to make a life that is meaningful for them again in the future. And that's, again, the American way. That's the Floridian way. And so when people are preparing themselves emotionally, for anything, including natural disasters, it's really about just knowing who you are and how strong you are.
Doctor doesn't know me well. I had plenty of failures in college.
And it strengthens you. Failure is actually it's painful while you're going through it, but in the end, you kind of realize what you got,
Well, and And it sounds like to me I'm living a long time because I'm about ready to celebrate my 30th wedding anniversary. Is that a good sign, Doctor?
Lovely. That is fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah, my wife always tells me I don't put enough value in that 30 years. So,
yeah,
so I'm going to tell
30 years
her.
is something. That's important. Yeah.
I'm going to tell her tonight.
Clearly...
You've made this clear now. That's a very valuable, and that added 10 more years to my life tonight.
I'm at 44. I'm at 44 years.
You're gonna.
So, hey.
Oh wow! Congratulations
Wow.
to you both. That's really something to celebrate. I mean, to find somebody to kind of journey through life with and be lucky enough that nothing happened and that you both stayed dedicated to each other.
Journey might be a good word to use. Journey. I don't know if I'd use journey for ours. The Mad Hatter ride or something.
There you go.
Yeah. Ours was more like that. Listen, Dr. Rebecca Kennedy, thank you so much. Enlightening conversation tonight about stress and how to deal with stress, and it's a subject we don't often talk about really in small business. We talk about, like you say, we talk about the successes and the failures and the business models and the techniques and the hiring and the firings and all that, but stress doesn't come up an awful lot. So I'm glad you're kind of putting a spotlight on another issue that a small business owner has to deal with, and we appreciate your time tonight. So thank you so much, Dr. Kennedy from University of West Florida.
Oh, thank you, Tom and Greg. It was my pleasure.
And with that, we will bring to close another segment of Startup Talk. I want to thank our guest tonight, Dr. Rebecca Kennedy, and remind everybody that all the business assistance programs discussed on tonight's program, you can get more information on at irscbiz.com. With that, I will bring to an end this segment and say we will talk to you next week on Startup Talk.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good week, my friend. You've been listening to Startup Talk on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, webcaster to the world, WSTU, Stewart, and WQCS, Fort Pierce.